Good morning, everyone, and happy Wednesday. So, let's talk about privilege, the subpoenas, attorneys, and the court orders when it comes to these kind of questions. Just in case you see them on your exam, I want you to be prepared to how to answer these questions and follow the step-by-step process that it will take. Questions will be worded differently depending on, I guess you can say, depending on how the exam test writers would like to upset you come that day, but that's okay because we are going to be prepared when it comes to answering these questions. So let's first take a dive into what is privilege. Privilege is a legal right. It's not ethical and it's not a professional rule. It's legal. Privilege belongs to the client. It does not belong to you. It does not belong to the therapist, right? It just gives the client the right to prevent you, the therapist, from giving up information that is confidential within a legal setting. That's the courtroom, that's depositions, whatever the case may be. The therapist cannot waive privilege, and when it says waive, it means let's just move privilege out of the way and give the information up. That's all waiving privilege means. Waiving means, okay, well, I thank you for asserting the privilege, but just forget about it and just release my information. Only the client or the legal guardian can waive privilege. If the client is a minor, then yes, it's the legal guardian that can waive the privilege. If the client waives the privilege, the therapist might be legally required to disclose the information to the court, whoever the case may be. Again, privilege is a legal right. It's not ethical. When does privilege not apply? Child abuse and neglect. We are mandatory reporters. Privilege is automatically going to be overridden because it is a legal duty to report suspected child abuse or neglect. If mental health is an issue within legal proceedings, privilege does not apply. If the client's mental health is directly the issue, it does not apply. Custody evaluations, civil commitment hearings, competency, that's mental health, right? Competency to stand trial, and psychological injury claims in civil cases, privilege does not apply. It's going to automatically be overridden, right? If your client is suing you, privilege does not apply. If the therapist sues the client or seeks a restraining order, privilege is waived because why? The client's mental health becomes part of the legal defense or the offense in which that therapist is suing the client for. Privilege does not apply. If you have a client that is talking about discussing a future crime or violence, that's not privileged. Past crimes are, but not future. Threats to others, frauds, schemes, anything criminal that is future that's being planned, privilege applies. Past, privilege does not apply. Here it is, tear us off, duty to warn, protect. Privilege does not apply, right? Because now you're threatening to harm an identifiable person, you have a victim, you have a plan, it is your legal duty to warn that potential victim and notify the proper authorities. Privilege does not apply in those areas. Okay? Now, this is your confidentiality versus privilege, right? Confidentiality and privilege, there are two different aspects. Your confidentiality that you have with your client is what? Yes, it's ethical and it's legal duty to keep the client information private, but who holds the confidentiality? The therapist does. You do. Where does it apply? It only applies in clinical and professional settings, right? And the main purpose of that is to do what? To protect to protect the client's privacy, right? Can confidentiality be broken? Yes, we know that. Danger, abuse, harm to somebody else. Yes, we know that. Can it be waived? Yes, confidentiality can be waived by client request or legal duty. Absolutely, confidentiality can be waived. If whatever has been discussed in your therapy session, yes, it's confidential, but if it has anything to do with the court case or anything like that that they feel is going to be beneficial, yes, it can be waived. And some examples are what? You know that, right? Not sharing details with spouse or family member in therapy or whatever. The no secrets policy thing, right? The therapist not running her mouth to other people about her clients and stuff that she's working with, right? That's confidentiality. But see, privilege is legal, right? And it prevents the therapist from testifying or disclosing any information in the court that the client does not want you to, right? But who holds the privilege? The client does. And where does it apply? In the legal settings. And what's the main purpose? To protect the client's rights during legal proceedings, deposition, courts, custody evaluations, whatever the case may be. Yes, it can be broken, and yes, it can be waived. But who can waive it, though? The client can waive it, or who else can waive it? The judge can as well, because, hey, I'm overriding it. I need it. Privilege doesn't count. If it's a court order, privilege is going to be overridden because the judge may deem fit, like, hey, this is more than just having to do with you trying to keep this information private, but the judge can sometimes override it, right? Yes, confidentiality and privilege, two different aspects. Make sense? Okay. Here we are, these attorneys and these therapists, we assert the privilege, right? It's just to help our clients, right? A subpoena is not a court order. It's not. If the therapist receives a subpoena or a court order, like, you will know what it is that you need to do, especially when it comes to navigating these questions on the exams, and I'll walk us through it. If a subpoena requests client records or testimony, and the client has not waived the privilege, again, waiving a privilege simply means thank you for asserting the privilege, but forget about the privilege, release the information. The therapist then must assert privilege. We do not have to comply right away if it's a subpoena. You don't comply right away. The thing that you do, you won't ignore it, but you don't comply right away. You're going to do what? Probably seek legal consult, right? The therapist may then do what? Inform the attorney or the court that the information has been privileged. You can request that it be squashed if you want to, or you can wait for the court to rule on whether privilege even applies. So that's you waiting for that judge to say, you know what, I'm overriding you, give me the information. But that's from a judge. That is a court order from a judge. An attorney can't do that. I read some information that says that in Eli Karam's book, saying that the lawyers will try to scare you with how fancy they make a request. And I'm like, well, I guess that makes sense. But you don't comply right away, but you don't just ignore it, right? I hope that makes sense. How do we respond to a subpoena? This is like what I've learned, the step-by-step process. When you're served with a subpoena, you don't ignore it. You can't ignore it, right? You must respond to it, but you do not automatically comply. Responding and complying, two different things, right? Right? So first you need to check if there's a signed release from the client. If there's a signed release from the client, then that means, hey, okay, go ahead and just release this information. If the client has waived privilege, meaning thank you for asserting privilege, but hey, forget about it, just release the information, then yes. The subpoena is signed by a judge versus an attorney. You first need to check that information first, right? And if none of this information checks out, if there is no client release and there is no court order, then what are you going to do? You are going to assert privilege on behalf of the client. Notify the client or the attorney, or seek legal consult or submit a motion to squash what's been given to you. This is like your direct order, right? Do not automatically comply. First, you need to check if any of those three things are happening, and then you do so, right? But then the questions may be worded like in a way, but pay attention to how the question is being worded, right? So here we are. If the client is unavailable or has not responded to the subpoena or that fancy little writing or whatever it is that the attorney tried to do, then what are you going to do? You're going to assert privilege until you get in contact with the client or they waive it. If the client refuses to waive privilege, even if the court wants the information, the therapist must not disclose it without what? The client's written waiver or a judge's order that is going to override it. If the client does not want to waive the privilege, meaning saying, hey, thank you for a certain privilege, I want to keep the privilege, you still can't disclose it without the client's written waiver. So I'm guessing, like, once that happens and then the judge is like, you know what, give me the information. That's the court order. That's what the judge is going to say. Child abuse, imminent risk, due to harm to somebody else. Then yes, that's what's going to happen. Right? Okay. So here it is. These are the tips for the exam. I'm going to try to explain this in a way that I taught myself, how I learned how to navigate these kind of questions. Again, privilege belongs to the client. It does not belong to the therapist. The therapist simply is protecting the client's information by asserting the privilege in legal situations, right? So if you are asserting privilege and that client says, you know what, just waive it, meaning thank you for asserting the privilege, but go ahead and give the information anyway, or the court overrides it, ruling of the order, hey, I don't care about your privilege, give me the information, right? So questions about privilege, what are they looking for when it comes to the exam? Who holds the privilege? The client. They may ask you a simple little basic question. The client. Who asserts it? The therapist. On behalf of the client. They may try to test you, right? When is it overridden? Know when privilege is overridden. That's abuse. That's risk. Anything involving mental health, risk to child abuse, elder abuse, legal proceedings involving anything that has to do with the mental health of the client is going to be overridden. Duty to warn, duty to protect, tear us off. Privilege is going to be overridden. Know that. Just in case they ask you that question, know that information. The exam is also going to test you on what happens when you get a subpoena or a court order. Know how to answer those questions. Know how to navigate that process of what you do when you receive a subpoena or when you receive a court order. So, what does a privileged question look like? Now, here it is. This is what I had to learn. Testify, court, subpoena, legal proceeding, disposition. I'm trying to think of other words. Like, there are so many different words that will let you know. A custody battle. I've seen vignettes that talk about parents being in a very like a divorce that they're going through that is just like hard, and now they're fighting for, one of them is fighting for sole custody and things like that. So when you see words like that, you will know that it possibly has something to do with privilege, right? So remember, if you see a question that says there is no consent from the client, then think about asserting privilege. Again, subpoenas are not court orders. Do not confuse the two. You can respond to a subpoena by asserting privilege and waiting for the court's decision, right? So if you get a subpoena and the client has not waived privilege or have a signed release, then what are you going to do? What do you do? There's different ways that you have to navigate these questions. So I am going to do some examples today in the group so that we can just familiarize ourselves with that, okay? So keep this in mind. If there is no client consent and there's a subpoena only, you assert privilege. If a judge order with no waiver, you're going to comply. Because it's a judge order, you have to comply to it. So think about that question. If it says like, you received a court order for your client's notes or whatever, or records or whatever, and it's a court order, how do you proceed? If their answer response is that says give over the information, the answer response is probably going to be give over the information. But be mindful of how that question is worded and pay attention to the rest of the other answer responses and see if they make sense or match with how you know you should follow when you assert privilege or when you give over the information. Pay attention to it. It's very important to pay attention to all of the answer responses when it comes to this question. Again, you know when privilege is overridden, right? child abuse, terror assault, legal case about mental health is waived by the law. There's nothing that you can do about that. Nothing that you can do about that. Not even your client. When you get that court order from that judge, I'm overriding privilege, you give up the information. We're going to do some practice questions in the group for this today, just so that we have a clear understanding. Just so to make sure that everyone have a clear understanding of privilege and how to navigate these questions. So happy Wednesday, everyone. How are you feeling regarding privilege? If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please don't be afraid to leave me a comment. Send me a message on Facebook. I am here to support each and every one of you. But yes, it is so important to know the difference between confidentiality and privilege, because at some point, at some time, they both may be waived or broken, right? You know when confidentiality is broken within a professional setting, and also being able to know when confidentiality can be broken in a legal setting. You know, confidentiality is more like ethics, privilege is legal. So let's keep that in mind. Today in a group, we're going to do some questions regarding privilege, just so we get like a clear understanding and how to navigate these questions the correct way. Again, happy Wednesday, everyone. I hope you have a marvelous day, and everyone knows how to reach me. Send me a message. Send me a comment with questions, comments, or concerns. Leave a post on my YouTube page. I don't mind. I check everything daily. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you all so much. I will talk to you all soon.